For this one, I want to state whether or not the x equals 2 is a 0 of the function. So I'm just going to test this with synthetic division. So I put the 2 in. I write down my coefficients. I bring down the first term. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. I add straight down. And what I'm looking for here is a 0. Remember, when I evaluate this thing through synthetic division, the remainder is my evaluation. So if I get a 0 here, it means that, yes, this thing is a solution. It is a 0 of the function. Okay? Then I'm testing the same thing with a -3 into a different function. So I've got a 1. I'm missing the x cubed, so I've got to put a 0 in its place. The -8, the -1, and the +12. I bring down the coefficient. I multiply. I add straight down. 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 And so this time, when I evaluate the function using the factor remainder theorem, I get a 24, which means, no, this one is not a 0 of the function. Okay? In this one, it asks me to find the remaining zeros given that f of 4 equals 0. In other words, x equals 4 is one of my solutions. So I'm just going to plug this in using synthetic division. I bring down the first term. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. And I add straight down. And it shouldn't be surprising that I get a 0 here. This told me I was going to get a 0 when I plugged it in. But what that does, if x equals 4 is one of my solutions, it means that x minus 4 is one of my factors. And so what I'm doing is I'm dividing out the x minus 4. And when I divide out the x minus 4, it leaves me with an x squared plus 8x plus 15. Okay, that's what my synthetic division right here tells me. And so really what we're doing is we're factoring this thing through division. But now I want to find the solutions. I want to set this equal to 0. I can finish solving this by factoring. Right here, build a bridge. Two numbers that multiply to 15 but add to an 8 are a +5 and a +3. And now I can set each factor equal to 0 and finish solving this thing. And of course, I'll get the 4 because that was the answer that I was given. X equals 4 right here. This one I would get x equals a -5 and x equals a -3. So I get all three solutions simply by dividing out that first value. Okay? And really, in the next couple here, I'm doing the same thing, except instead of being given a value to start, I've got to take a guess. All right? And we always want to guess factors of this constant term. So if I think about the -8, I've got a 1, a 2, a 4, and an 8, or a negative version of each of those. And really, we can come up with certain fractions by dividing by factors of a, but a is a 1 this time. So I'm just looking at these factors. So I just take a guess. Maybe I guess something like a 2. And I plug it in using synthetic division. Got a 1, a -1, -10, and a -8. I bring down the 1, I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply, I add straight down, and I get a -24. So that one doesn't work. I can cross it off my list, and then I just try again. Okay, and I keep taking guesses until I come up with one that works. So maybe I'll try a -2 next. So I bring this guy down. I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply, I add straight down. And I get a 0, which means that one works. Okay, so -2 is one of my solutions, which means x plus 2 is my factor. And if I factor that out, it leaves me with this thing down here, which is the x squared minus 3x minus 4. And now if I want to finish solving this by factoring, I just have to factor the trinomial that's left here. Okay, two numbers that multiply to a -4 but add to a -3 are a -4 and a +1. And now I set each factor equal to 0. So I find out that x equals a -2, x equals a +4, and x equals a -1. So there's my three solutions. Okay? Number 20, I'm doing the same thing, so I'm looking at factors of 10, essentially. And it's always good to write them out. Positive and negative versions. And I just take a guess. Maybe I'll guess something like a, I don't know, a negative, well, let's go with the 2. go with something smaller. So we take a guess. 1, -6, 13, -10. I bring down the 1. I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply, I add straight down. I multiply. And what a great guess. You know, I can't say enough about my guessing abilities. They're amazing. So now I know that x minus 2 is one of my factors. Then my other factor is the x squared minus 4x plus 5. And when I look at something like this, I build a bridge, two numbers that multiply together to give me a positive 5, but add together to give me a negative 4. Well, that's not going to happen, okay? That's not going to factor, which means I either have to go to completing the square or my quadratic formula. I'm going to use the the completing the square rather, because I have an a value that's 1 and a b value that's even. So I subtract the 5 from each side. And again, you can use the quadratic formula. That is fine. Feel free to use the quadratic formula. I do b divided by 2 and square it. That's a plus 4. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So now this factors into an x minus 2 squared equals a negative 1. I take the square root of each side. So I find out that x minus 2 equals plus or minus I, because that's the square root of the square root of a negative 1 is. And then I add the 2 to each side. So the solutions that I get here are a 2 plus or minus I, which means I got the x minus 2 equals 0, which gives me x equals 2, which is the one I already discovered. But then I also have the 2 plus or minus I. And really, that's 3 solutions listed, 2 complex solutions and 1 real solution. Okay? In this last one, this time I'm looking at factors of 30. And there's a nice, healthy list of these. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, and 30. And then, of course, the negative versions of each of those. So I just start off taking some guesses. Maybe I'll try something like a negative 2 again. The 2s seem to be working for me. So now I bring down this guy. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. I add straight down. I multiply. I add straight down. And we can't all be as lucky as I am, but you know, sometimes it works out. So I've got x plus 2 as one of my factors because that gives me the x equals negative 2. Then I've got an x squared minus 8x plus 15, which that can be factored. That factors into an x minus 3 and an x minus 5. And now I set each factor equal to 0, so find out that x equals a negative 2, x equals 3, and x equals 5. Okay, hope this was helpful. Good luck on your test.